Hey, are you going online and buying plugins for your favorite DAW that you don't need to buy because you already have 2,000 of them too many? Probably. Let's do something better with our time. Let's make music. Cue the cool music. Title card's up. Oh, yeah. It's a pretty lame title card, isn't it? Yeah, that's what we call that in video business, a title card. That's the thing that kind of is supposed to capture the essence of the show you're trying to do. This one needs some work. But you know what this is? It's a placeholder. When you have a card like that doesn't look its best, it means you have one coming along that's probably going to be a lot better. And putting something temporarily into place allows you to move forward with a placeholder in place like that you can always come back to and do something else with later. We do that a lot in music. Today, I am actually going to be doing something called a done session. What exactly in the world? Hang on here a second. Find my. Here we go. What in the world is a done session? Isn't done? Actually, it has a different meaning in this world that we live in as musicians, at least this one anyway, and a large group of them just like me. I'm going to tell you about a part of this process today, the music making process, called a done session. Now, before I go too far into this, I want to say that I am going to be talking about some things here that are professionally taught by this gentleman, actually, that gentleman right there. His name's Mike Monday, and he owns a website called Make Music Your Life. And he is somebody who's spent about, 20 years delving into the rabbit hole of the music making process. And he's come out of the other side of it with an incredibly rich, vibrant methodology and approach to the music creation process that, helps people get music finished. Turns out finishing music is not the easiest thing in the world. And given the fact that there's about 1,000,000 things to be distracted with out there, social media, for example, can be a distraction. Sometimes having too much equipment can be paralyzing. Too many decisions, too many choices, too much this, too much that, too much second guessing. Anyways, whereas a lot of other people out there are teaching you how to compress music and master music and these kinds of things, this fella is the one who has made a life out of the entire bigger picture of making music. And I want to say that I am not a qualified teacher of his program, and I am not necessarily attempting to do that. I am just sharing with you a few things that I have learned, that I am putting into practice, along with a whole bunch of other things that I have, some of which are my own, or some of which are things that I've learned from other people. And please, always keep this in mind. I am not here to sell products, supplies, plugins, programs, anything like that. If I share something with you like this fella right here, it's because there is something that came from that helped me tremendously, and I'm just passing it along to you in the hopes that it can do the same. Okay, now, getting on to the done session. What does done mean? Well, I have a music process that I use, and essentially, done is on towards the last stage of the process. This is actually a look inside of my music making here with the help of that gentleman I told you earlier, Mike Monday, creating this way of cycling through the creative process. Things start out with a splurge, and this is actually just a week's worth of things right there. And then I have many tracks that are in some stage of being produced. Then I have some tracks that are looking for their special thing or looking for their message or their purpose. Perhaps has not been found yet. Then I have tracks that are labeled green here that are definitely knowing what they want to be. And then as we move on through to done, I have many tracks. That's not all of them. There actually have some over here still in a sketchbook that are taking a break from being done, the done routine for a while. These are tracks that have made it clear that I've made it clear that I want to either A, release, or B, I don't want to release. So right now, the things that are in this done section are tracks that I know I am going to release. And then in that regard, they're at some stage well along the process. You know, they know what they want to be. They know what their mission is and all this stuff. And right now I'm just going to clear out the pathway between the track itself and the actual finishing it off and getting it finished. And and I'm going to do this right now with you today and share with you this process. Practice process. I prefer the word practice, but some people like to use the word process. I like to use the word practice because it is a practice. It's a practice, just like a doctor has a practice, or a lawyer has a practice, a musician has a practice, and it never stops. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do with this track that is along its way, its working title is For Pete's Sake. These are just working titles. That doesn't mean it's going to be the final title. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is something called direct listening. What is direct listening? Obviously, I am going to share with you something now that is very important to me and a very important part of this practice. Think of, listening to music. You can listen to music different ways. I'm trying to think. This is kind of tough to explain this, and trying to figure out the best way to get across to you what exactly direct listening is. And thinking like a musician, let's do this. I'm going to pull up a plug-in here real fast. Okay. Let's pretend that this plugin controls your emotional state. Okay? I know, bear with me here for a minute. It's going someplace. So, you're going to sit down today to do music, but before that happened, you got some kind of a phone call, some kind of message of really good news. Maybe you landed a gig writing music for a film, or maybe you have been selected to do something in the studio that's like something you've always wanted to do. Whatever it is, you're riding high on the emotional scale, okay? Let's say you're at about, a good fat 8 or 9 on that scale, all right? Then you proceed to sit down and make music. And when you're done, you're thoroughly convinced that's about the best thing you've ever done. You're going crazy about it. You're just thinking, when my friends hear this, oh my God, it's going to be amazing, right? You go to sleep that night and you sleep one of those nights of deep, deep sleep. One of those ones that you wake up the next day and you're still tired, because you were in such a deep sleep. And not that you're feeling down or anything, but your emotional state is now dialed down to about a 1 or 2. You can be at a 1 or 2 and not be miserably sad. You can just be rested mental state. And you listen to that same track that you did the day before, and suddenly, what happened? Where'd it go? Where's the excitement? Where's that sound? It was amazing for a minute, and now I'm listening to this, and it's like it lost everything. So what I'm painting for you here is a picture of how our mental state can affect our perception of what we think our music is doing, or what it is or what it isn't. And it's not something that can be trusted. And it's because we're thinking with our thoughts and not listening to the music for the music and what it is, simply in and of itself. Direct listening is a practice that takes that into consideration. And when you're listening to music, you carefully listen, notice what your thoughts are doing. Okay, you're mindful of what's going on. And this uses something called metacognition. Okay, so metacognition is the awareness and understanding of one's own thought process. Okay, it means essentially that you are aware of what you're thinking. It's almost like thinking about thinking. Now, this doesn't mean to say that the idea is that you want to be thinking as hard as you can. No. I said that you want to be aware that you're thinking. And when your thoughts wander off from what it is that you're trying to focus on, in this case, the music, you gently steer them back onto course. That is the listening of what's happening in the notes and the sound. So that's what I'm about to do right now for this track. I'm going to focus on that and just relax here for a minute. Get comfortable. It's a little warm in here. Okay. Let me turn off that metronome. Okay. Let's just take a look at that for a second now. All right. Stop that. So I've now direct listened to the track. I was paying attention to what the music is doing. Before I go into my next step, I guess I'll just take a closer look here with you all and talk about a couple of things. I had mentioned the thing in the tracks. Every track that I create has something it wants to be. It has something it wants to say. It has a delivery to make and a method of doing it. And it's in the midst of that is it's playing with something called tension and release. In this particular track, I think its thing is that it has a pretty strong melody. We have, let me see here. this counter melody thing that's kind of going on in the upper end. So inside of that, if you take a closer look, what we have is a couple of minor seconds playing around in a bunch of consonant things happening too. So we have this one and this one closer together, but they're spread apart. You see. Something fragile is happening in there. I'm trying to get something across there that's kind of transparent, gentle, fragile. Don't handle it too roughly or it might break. And that's why I'm not using a whole bunch of other disassociated dissonance inside of there. I mean, after a while, that starts to sound like a little bit of a headache. And, I want to kind of try to keep this thing flowing without all of that really, really tough dissonance. So I'm sticking with this. Okay. And then I have picked out some drums in this track that I've put in there too as well. And this pulsating thing that's happening right here. All right, so now I'm basically going to go through and I'm going to make a list of a few things that I would like to do with this track. Okay, this is a done session checklist here. And from inside of here, I'm going to, I should actually switch screens. I'm trying to get better at this. From inside of here, this is my Trello where I keep track of my projects. I'm going to start adding some checklist items. Now, I already did a direct listening session already. So now, via memory, I'm going to try to remember some of the things that I think need to be either adjusted or, happen in order to get this track further along the way to its natural completion. I'm going to take a closer look to the opening. Oops, I can't see it all here. Piano line. It sounds very clocky, very on the beat. Okay? And I'm going to guess that I laid that down with an active metronome going on. Oh, yeah, I can see it right there. So if you look right here, you can see that is a very, very set state of tempo. Whereas when I move into this part, there's a lot more variance in tempo happening throughout here. So I'm going to retrack that without metronome. Oops. Let me clean that up a little bit. And I cannot type today to save my life. Okay. I'm going to move on to think here. Now, what else did I notice? Yeah, the drum sound. The drum sound was, not exactly what I want it to be. I'm going to take a closer look at this for a second. And let's also remember there's two parts to this one. There is the actual sound of the drums, and there's what the drums are actually playing. Both of which I would like to moderately change. I'm looking, and notice when I describe these things, I'm going to start getting very specific about this. I'm not going to use, hasty generalizations. Hasty generalizations are the first move right back into the rabbit hole again. You want to stay out of that and moving in a direction of having something distinct to say about what it is you want to do on these tracks. So in my particular case with this track, I want to find a drum that's got more rounded low end and has a little bit of a tighter fill whole way across the kit. Now, let's talk about this for a minute. One could easily say that why not just apply some compression? Why not just do some mixing on that and you can get that to do what it is, And you're right. I could, but see, I operate under a very, basic principle that I mix and I master not to fix problems. I mix and master to enhance outcomes. So if I'm trying to change this drum track and I still have access to the MIDI kits that created it in the first place, why not go for a better kit? If I grab a better kit, that's a choice I can make. Whereas if I have this as an audio file, then I'm going to be looking at totally dealing with the waveforms I have. In this particular case, I get to cheat a little bit. Let's listen to this track. I like to try to avoid the habit of listening over and over again and get onto the solution as quickly as possible. I just wanted to get one more earful there so I could do a comparative. Switch to this Detroit kit. See how that sounds. With that kit in the mix too. See, wherever it is I'm in my head with that sound, I'm already further on my way down the line towards it with that particular kit. Now, what am I going to avoid doing? I'm going to avoid listening to 20 different kits and switching a snare drum out and a hi-hat and this kind of thing, and one thing right after another. Then next thing you know, you've changed it 50 times and gotten absolutely no place. I'm just telling you from personal experience here. This is a way to avoid that happening. Okay. All right. So let me get back over here. Change kit to a better one. Got that one done. I'm glad about that. Just going to go ahead and check that off. Okay, now I want to, like I said earlier, vary the arrangement of the kit line. Okay, I just want something that adds some sparkle and variety to the line. Nothing crazy. Just simple variants to enhance the syncopation of the opposing instruments. Okay? All right. And the way I'm thinking about this is I'm talking about right after this first set of bars and this set of bars, I'm thinking about breaking away to something that's a little bit more hi-hat-ish. Sorry for these words. This is the kind of words we use all the time. I used to work with this mastering engineer, man, and he absolutely hated when people would use like heat to describe a sound. He'd be like, what is heat? Nothing's hot in here. Sound is sound. Because, musicians are always, using these kinds of strange adjectives. And heat is like the most overused one in the entire vernacular. Adding that touch of heat to the track. Anyway, usually that involves saturation, is what is used to describe heat. Anyhow, I've already got the hats going there. Maybe I could simplify it out a little bit and speed them up a little. I don't know. Let's see here. Okay. Try one more here. There you go. See, the relationship between the drummer and the piano here. Let's talk about that for a second. So we have a long open melodic line happening there, okay? It's very wide open on the piano. This allows the drummer to get loose on these rhythms. And I'm going to cut this right here. Wait a minute, give me a second. Add a little bit more of a fill to this. Hang on a second. Something a little simpler. combination of placeholder material that I can enhance and a combination of solutions to what I'm looking for. I'm thinking ahead here. Can this work? Let me see what just happened. Now here, I'm going to want to increase the intensity a little bit. So I'm going to need a different relationship between the kick and the snare. I want to announce something's getting ready to happen here. Sometimes we like to just drop things on people's heads and not give them any warning at all. When you have something like this that's, flowing so smoothly, you want to kind of keep people into that transition so they just flow right into it, you know what I mean? And not get kicked out of the raft for a rock, hitting a rock or something, in the white water. Little machine gunish. I'm going to hold the line there for now. Not going to spend way too much time on that because I have other things I want to consider. So let's talk for a minute. This is a great time to talk about the piano back here at the beginning. And some observations and some practices and some things that I'm going to use here to take a closer look at this, okay? And this goes along with our list, Take a closer look at the opening piano line. It sounds very clocky on the beat. Retrack without a metronome. Although I'm on to something there, I'm still being very vague. I'm still being quite vague. It almost sounds like, am I working to solve a problem or am I creating one? Let's have an experiment here. Look at the space between the notes. What do you hear? Well, see. Here. And then how can this be improved? Let's say, and again, that's an open-ended question. We don't like open-ended questions. Open-ended questions, encourage you to live and stay right in this space right here. We don't want to do that. So how can this be improved? Let's come up with an answer. Let's say create a stronger sense of phrasing using that space between the notes. Okay, I know for someone that's not, I know there's typos in there, guys. I don't have time to sit here and do a typing class on myself. So I'm sitting here talking about the space between the notes. And to anybody who is looking at that, that could be like, what the hell is he talking about? Okay. The space between the notes is one of the most incredibly important aspects of any piece of music, really. Especially when you look at the piano. You have space between every one of those keys that you see in there, but there's also space between the timing of the notes, and that's what I'm really talking about here. So when I'm talking about the particular line that we had there, it's this little repetitious thing. And when I do these kinds of repetitious things, what I do is I try to come up with my own supplemental material, arrangement material that some people might look at and call a loop. Now, before electronic music conquered the land of loopology, so to speak, if you would have said loop, it'd be funny if you said a loop to a classical music composer. What would they look at you and think? Loop? What? Oh, you mean that thing that keeps repeating in the background? You're calling that a loop? Yeah. Hang on a sec. Just going to zoom out there. Just bear with me for a second. I'd like you to be able to see everything that I'm doing there. Okay. Okay. Let's take a look at that line under a microscope for a second. As it is right now. This is as it exists right now. Okay. Now I'm going to get in there even further. When I say under the microscope, I mean in the key editor window. Okay. Yeah. Let's open that up just a smidge and listen to that. Okay. There is a chance that somebody that's looking at this is completely unfamiliar with what this thing is. So all you established musicians out there, give me a second here so that we can have everybody in this conversation. It's the people that may not know what this thing is. This is called a key editor window, and within it is every note that is being played in that line graphically illustrated on a grid with a keyboard to the side of it, which these notes all correspond to. That is of course, piano keyboard, and each note is a measurement. These are not approximations. These are exact digital measurements that include all information about the note as it exists in this current state of time. Okay? For example, the velocity of the note. This is another way of saying the impact. How hard the note is being struck, measured all the way from the bare minimum down here all the way to the top up there. Let's just go ahead and undo that. All right. Each one of these notes has a length. And this length is what it is by the actual physical presence of my fingers on the keyboard at the time in which it was played. That is an exact exact measurement of exactly how long my finger was on A at that point before I released the key from the start of the press to the end of the press. Now, for you musicians out there that are really established and you know, like, okay, hey man, I so know all this already. Bear with me here for a second, because listening to this stuff that you already know presented in a completely different light with a different point of interest on it might elaborate on some of the things that you already know and enhance them. At least I hope so. All right, continuing. Listening to this line, I could go ahead and make adjustments if I wanted to. Watch what happens if I increase the actual impact, i.e. velocity, of this note to maximum. Ow! Sorry. Yeah, that's nasty. So what this does is this allows the editing process here to enter a level of minutia that affects basically all aspects of the life of an individual note. Now, when we cross out of this realm from digital to audio, right now these are just digital graphic representations that are triggering a sound based off of my playing. When we move from this to audio, our capabilities of how much manipulation can happen are going to, you know, decrease in some ways and expand in some others. There are some things you can only do in audio, and there's a lot of things you can only do in MIDI. The general rule of thumb from MIDI to audio is let's go ahead and get that MIDI as far along the line as we can get it, that we're happy with it, and then we can go ahead and stem it out to audio and go through the audio mixdown process. So that's kind of what I'm doing here right now on this section. Again, we are at the beginning of the track, and this is an opening line which makes its presence known as a counter melody further on in the piece. I'm starting the piece of music off with a secondary melody as a warm-in. Later on, we move to this is where this is going to get a little more interesting now. I talked about the space between the notes. Well, why don't we just go ahead and remove it? I'm going to bring up a script here, type of script. These are things that allow us to change the note relationships. This one is called fixed note length. Let me get back onto the screen here for you. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm still getting my feet wet here and running this system. It's yeah. So anyways, yes, this is fixed note length, and it allows me to manipulate the length of these notes, and I'm going to set that to a very short value, and I'm going to tell it to do that to all of them. Okay? Obviously, you know something's going to happen here. But wait. Actually, almost sounds like it did before, and this is, of course, because I have a sustain pedal engaged. The sustain pedal is doing what it always does, and it is sustaining the notes. Well, let's go ahead and wipe that out. Okay. Remember, what are we doing here? I'm taking a look at the space between the notes because I'm thinking if I do that, I might see something here. I might see something here that might make a better opening in this song for me. How would I even go about playing that? Okay, so we would call that staccatissimo. Very common thing in music. Something that's not so common in music is playing without the sustain pedal at all. Which brings me to a major part of this discussion with you is, as part of my practice, I have been eliminating the sustain pedal from my practice. This then in turn places a tremendous burden on me to face the connections between my notes and make them connect, without the help of the sustain pedal. Okay. This means now that the voicing of the notes that I'm going to play, then their expressivity are going to be directly related to the amount of time my note stays depressed on the keyboard. Okay? So that's no longer a static, full-on sustain. Well, give me a second here. I want to check something on my sound here. Occurs to me, yeah, my polyphony isn't set to max on this sampler. I'm hearing it. What do I mean? I'm hearing notes that are not sustaining because I'm running out of polyphony, the amount of voices that can play at once. On a piano, that's a very big deal because you have 88 of them that could be happening, theoretically at the same time. So you want to try to keep that max polyphony setting. The only question is on a virtual instrument of this magnitude, you could be putting a sledgehammer weight on a processor, so you're going to make sure you have the RAM to accommodate that, or you might crash and burn. Okay, looking at this now from the bigger picture, I'm probably going to want to practice that for a few minutes before I try to execute that. I might want to make a notation as to exactly how I'm going to do that. See, how can I interpret the different ways I can play this? Well, when I just play that and I hold down the sustain pedal and I play the notes, fairly predictably, measurably, how do I want to describe that? It's almost as if it's very sure of itself. It's very kind of knows, doesn't have a tremendous amount of uncertainty, tentativeness, I guess you could say. When I remove that sustain pedal and take away the consistent sustaining connections of all the notes, I guess I could try to do a take, although I'm going to run into a little bit of an issue with metronome freedom right here because I'll have to take a closer look, but Logic's not going to want to adapt to tempo because the metronome is already locked to these regions that are already there. I'll have to take a closer look at that, but I'll go ahead and mute this line right here. Come back here. Give myself a 1 count in. I actually just solo that out is what I'll do, so I don't have to worry about incoming traffic in the line to come. So that is, going to be a different expression of that same track. My impression is the answer to all of this lies somewhere mildly in between with less adherence to the metronome. That's the take I just did. Yeah, I'm liking that better already. Okay. Well, I'd say that's a successful experiment there. Summary, looking at the space between the notes like that, and especially when it comes to instruments like the piano, and you know what, not especially when it comes to instruments like the piano, when it comes to all instruments, controlling that space is kind of a incredible asset for expressivity and keeping things alive, keeping music expressive, okay? So looking back here over the course of this little foray today, I think we had a good session. I accomplished some goals. I would call this session nearly concluded. There's one more thing I'll do, but I'm not going to do that now. But I hope you enjoyed joining me for one of these types of sessions. And I am going to keep this piece out in the open with y'all. And you're going to be able to, join me for seeing where this goes. Talking for a moment about the purpose of this piece. Purpose can be both emotional and purpose as in terms of what I intend to do with it. I think as far as what I'm going to do with it, this is a kind of piece of music that is moving on its way to being used for, one of many ideas is that it could be used for a film trailer. Film trailer music usually has contrasting sections, and it usually ranges from energy level from 1 to 10. That means going the whole way up to 10. I like that kind of music. I think it's fun. It's not the only kind of music I like, but it is a fun kind of music. I think purposefully it is a kind of song that can be one of those inspire people kinds of things. I have a friend of mine that's struggling with a situation right now, and don't want to get into it too much, but I think, we all can reach a point in life when we can use some heroic inspiration, and I'm just thinking about those kinds of situations, and I think this is a purpose of this piece is to get on your feet and do what needs to be done. All right, so I thank you very much. Please like and subscribe. This is the first of many to come, and I will take this piece on to its next stage with you all very soon. Peace.